Joining me now to talk about all of this is criminal defense attorney Brian Gaither. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so really interesting ruling this judge has made throughout this trial so far. Some of them I don't agree with. I will say that I do agree with her ruling here, but that whole idea of hearsay and the argument being that we're not really trying to submit this for the truth of the matter asserted, but just for another reason. But when you're talking about text messages and you just want to show the jury a pattern, but you're reading these text messages that are pretty prejudicial to the defendant, how could you just say, hey, separate the two? We're just saying, look at the pattern. Don't look at the substance. It's kind of hard to do. So she had it redacted. I agreed with that. Did you agree with her ruling?
I do, because a lot of these things are real prejudicial, and you always have to take that into account.
Yeah.
Because granted, of course, in lawyer world, we're like, yeah, we're not using this for the truth of the matter asserted, which means simply not using this for the truth.
Yeah.
But you really are.
You are.
You really are,
You are.
by default, because it's a seed that's planted in, and of course the jury's going to think about it.
Yeah.
So for her redacting these particular details, it can show the timeline and actually not put that potential seed of guilt.
Well, because I think the prosecution was trying to be slick here.
Very slick.
Because clearly they wanted to get that conversation between the two, Chad and Cody, who were murdered, obviously, that conversation about the defendant's mental health, that, their credit was ruined, that he was stealing their money, and that, bolstering their theory about his obsession with this Bulgarian webcam girl. And so in a way to try and get that in front of the jurors, they make this argument that they want to establish this pattern. Now, mind you, it's a good try, but it definitely was obvious.
It's like a backdoor character evidence type situation.
No, it is. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So what about these two friends that testified yesterday? So you have Jericho Fine, who went to Japan with Cody and Grant and noticed that there was unauthorized charges to his account for webcam sort of activity on the part of Grant, right?
Yeah.
So we get why he was testifying, makes sense. It bolstered the state's theory, again, that Grant was obsessed with this webcam girl. But he sold this gun that he had, a 9mm Jericho gun, and sold it to Blake Turpin. And so before I get your thoughts on that, let's play a clip of Jericho on the stand talking about him selling this gun to Blake.
What kind of handgun is that?
It's a semi-automatic pistol. What do you mean, what kind of handgun?
Describe it. You said it was a Jericho?
Yeah, it's a Jericho 941. I had bought it because obviously it had my name. I thought that was kind of cool. And it was from an anime that I liked. The main character used it, so that's why I was interested in it.
And when did you purchase it?
April of 2012.
And the photograph that you looked at states Exhibit 6V. When was that photograph taken?
It was shortly after I received it. I was making a little Facebook post about it.
And what ultimately did you do with that gun? Did you sell it to anybody?
Around 2015, I sold it to my friend Blake Turpin.
Okay, so he sold it to his friend Blake Turpin. So, okay. Now, what makes the state believe that this gun he sold to Blake Turpin in I believe he bought the gun in 2012. He sold this gun in 2015. We are in 2019. What makes the prosecution believe that this is the gun that was used to murder Grant's family?
Well, truth be told, there's not a gun right now. So they need to have something that the jury can actually think about to kind of picture, this is possibly the gun. Because remember, the whole state's argument is, if not him, then who? And of course, as a defense attorney, you're like, you can't prosecute somebody that way. So.
But do they need a gun? They don't even need a gun.
They don't.
They have somebody placed in the home, transferring documents, transferring content over to a thumb drive. If it wasn't Grant Almato, then who would know that? What stranger would go and transfer photos of this webcam girl? I think why do you need a gun?
Well, it's like when on the sports team, when you're playing basketball, you're already up like 20. You're just trying to beat out the whole team. So they need the gun just so they can have that extra type of, it's trying to cover their bases. They don't have a murder weapon, so they need to have something.
They're reaching, though, and I think they're looking desperate at this point. They should be confident enough to say, we've got enough, jury, here for you to convict Grant Almato. We don't need the gun. And it's not atypical for a criminal to dispose of a murder weapon and us not find it. I mean, it's just typical, right? So Anyway, so Blake Turpin.
Yes.
Okay, he takes a stand. He's the person that bought this gun. I want to get your thoughts on him after we run this clip of him saying he actually received this gun from Jericho Fine.
And would you describe for the jury the scenario where that happened?
Sure. When we came back from dinner, we had gone out to a Japanese restaurant, and on the way back, Jericho and Grant both had indicated they needed to use the restroom. Jericho needed to do something a little more substantial, so I asked him to use the hallway bathroom. Grant, I told him he could go on back to my room and use the restroom.
So, where is the restroom in relation to your room and closet in your home?
Yep. If you walk in the door to my room, it's just a square. It's the front left corner. If you would turn right immediately, the next thing you'd find is the closet door, and just past that is the bathroom.
And so in order to go to the bathroom, one would have to enter your room.
Correct.
Okay, so he has this party 2 weeks before our gathering, 2 weeks before the murders take place. And then he's doing some spring cleaning in June, 1 month before this trial starts, and realizes his gun is missing. And then the next day reports it and says that Grant Almato might have taken it. How is it that he even makes this connection?
Man, like I said, what the state is trying to do, this whole gun and not having evidence could basically put reasonable doubt in the minds of the jury. They're trying to clean up this reasonable doubt. Now, of course, it's like by any means necessary. So they're using Blake to just speculate that Grant could have got it, which personally, it probably should have been an objection, like speculation, because how would you know? There's no evidence to say that he actually had it.
And that's the thing. So the defense is saying that he spoke to Jason Almato, which would make a lot of sense now. He talks to Jason. He's telling him more than he knows, because I just don't know how he could make the connection from a party in January and saying that's in the summer, June, this summer. He says, oh, that's when it went missing. No, you had somebody talk you through this, unless, and this is what I'm waiting on. He's supposed to be finishing up redirect today. There's probably going to be some recross. I'm waiting on the jury questions, because I'm hoping a jury will ask, did you know about Grant stealing money from his family, right?
Right.
Because if you did, if I knew I had a friend that was a klepto, essentially, stealing money, trying to, feed this obsession with this webcam girl, I wouldn't let that person go through my home without a chaperone, without me watching like a hawk, right? So for me to let him just go through my bathroom, you trusted this dude. Mm-hmm. You trusted your friend. So what makes you think 6 months down the line that that's him in January, that's where my gun went missing? It doesn't make any sense unless he has the benefit of hindsight with Jason Amato's information. What do you think?
Of course, he has the benefit of hindsight. He's seeing the same thing that we're seeing. So, of course, the public is a potential jury member. So he's a witness, so he can't be on the jury.
Yeah.
But he's seeing the same thing we're seeing, so he's putting the pieces together and saying, oh, man, yeah, Grant did have this obsession, and Grant did do this, and Grant did that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he did this.
So he's tailoring his testimony to make the theory fit.
That's what it seems like.
That's what it seems like to me. But I just, again, don't think the state really needs this. They have so much, and I think that with trying to force this, that makes the jury wonder if they're really struggling in their evidence, when I think that they have enough, and they should just go in there confidently with what they have.
They have to be very careful with that, too. Just when I was a prosecutor, a lot of times you may have similar transactions.
Yeah.
You have to be really careful about introducing all those similars, because the jury can say, well, hold up, time out. Why are you trying to bolster this? Why are you trying to do all this extra? It's overkill.
It's overkill. That's what I think it is. All right, so you are going to be staying put with me through the morning. So coming up, the state's forensic expert describes how Grant Almato spent hours binge watching a Bulgarian cam girl's website immediately after his family's massacre. Stay tuned to Court TV Live.
All right, Sylvia, look at me. I am outside going to check the mail, and I'm asking you if you can please, pretty please, send me one of your videos. I love it so much when you just send them to me. Yeah, I don't like buying your stuff. It makes me feel weird. Could you please send me one, though?
Back to Court TV Live. That was Grant Almato begging a webcam model named Sylvia to send him videos. Prosecutors say Sylvia is the reason Almato stole money from his family and ultimately killed his parents and brother. A digital forensic expert testified Monday about how many pictures of Sylvia were found on Amato's computer.
How many photographs are contained in this packet?
637.
Were there more photographs that were contained?
Yes, they were.
What is unique about these 637 photographs?
They appear to be of the same woman. Some of the photographs are explicit and some are not.
And the other photographs, were they missing anything in particular?
Oh, yes, the face.
Still with me to discuss this obsession of Grant Amato's is defense attorney Brian Gaither. All right, Brian.
Talk to me.
Okay, so at first I was thinking at the start of this trial, okay, so he has this obsession with going online. He's just a freak, whatever. It's not enough to suggest that someone would kill his family members, right? His only family for this woman who lives in Bulgaria. He's never met her. Okay, so he's sick, right? But when I heard this expert on the stand say that Grant transferred photos, okay? Transferred photos, 637 of them, the night of, right? Then you also hear his friend saying, yeah, in Japan, I noticed unauthorized charges to this site to speak to this webcam girl. So all of that, obviously, in accumulation, looks bad, right? Let's listen to Jericho Fine talk about these unauthorized charges, and I'll get your thoughts on the other side.
Now, at some point while you were in Japan, did you notice any charges being made on that particular card that we just displayed, State's Exhibit 302?
I did.
And tell the jury about that. When did you first observe that, and then what did you do?
I was out to dinner, and I went to pay for the dinner with the Discover card, and it had been frozen. So I contacted my father, since it's like a family account, and he sent me a screenshot of like three charges on the Discover. One went through, and then the other two were denied, but they were for my free cam tokens.
Okay, so his testimony, does that mean that Grant Amato is a murderer?
Well, it's the totality of circumstance. It's not just because he's obsessed, but there is a huge difference between you going to a random porn site, looking at random people and fantasizing. And here you have one particular person that you actually have built a relationship with. And you know, some things people do for love, even though I wouldn't call this love, it can actually point toward you possibly murdering people because you actually care about this person.
Okay, so let's listen to the computer forensic expert. Her name was Ms. Belai, describing the photos that were transferred over to this thumb drive.
State's Exhibit 10L, which is now State's Exhibit 250 in evidence, the other disc. I'm not going to publish it for the jury, but they can watch it on their own if they like. But can you sort of give them a general synopsis of what's contained on that disc?
Yes, it is a series of videos that I found on the thumb drive of what appears to be the same woman, just doing erotic actions.
That's where I was convinced that Grant Amato, I've had my suspicions that he was the person that murdered his family, but this to me, if I were a juror, that's all I would need. Because she testified that she examined Grant Amato's computer. And between 11:32 p.m. on January 24th, and that's the night that the prosecution says these murders occurred, to 12:27 a.m. the next day, January 25th, the 32-gig thumb drive had dozens of files transferred over to them. And these files were these photos of this Bulgarian webcam girl. Who other than Grant Amato would go into a home, because they're talking about an alternate suspect, the defense is, right? Anybody else other than Grant Amato would know to go to this computer and transfer over these photos, because it's that important. When you've just massacred a family, right? That's what told me. It had to be Grant. He knew the computer. His computer had these photos, files that were created last year, knew they were on his laptop, wanted to get them on this thumb drive because he was so obsessed, and the thought of not seeing these photos again obviously killed him because he had no regard for the family that he left downstairs in a pool of blood. That's what told me, okay, it's this guy.
Possibly, but you can also look at it in the alternative because he got.
Please give me the alternative.
It's really, I'm not saying it's the strongest alternative, but it is an alternative.
Give me one.
He's so obsessed with this woman that he's not even considering what's going on and the dangers that his family can be placed in. So he's spending this time actually trying to get, I guess, memories of this woman that he's in lust with. So that time, it doesn't really show that he killed her. It shows that he's obsessed. That's what it definitely shows.
So, okay, but you do agree that that places him in the home?
It does. It does.
It could be anybody, is what the defense is saying. But if we use common sense,
it places him in
going
the
to
home.
your computer to get these specific pictures that everybody keeps saying you have an obsession with. Okay, so you agree that he was in the house then, right?
He was in the house.
Okay, and if you believe the timestamps, or at least believe the time of death, let's just say that. If you believe that, then that means he was in the home after his family were murdered.
And that's the catch. That's the rub, because the defense is actually arguing against the timestamps, and I think that's where we're kind of arguing with. If you believe the prosecution's timestamps, it's almost a done deal. If you don't, it's a possibility. It's a reasonable doubt that.
Okay, so when do you think they could have died? What's the alternative there? If they didn't die January 24th, because obviously Cody didn't go to work the next day, that raised flags, right? There was no more activity on Margaret's computer where she was found dead after 4:44 p.m. on the 24th. So tell me when they could have died. After he transferred these files? In what way? How?
This is, like I said, it's an alternative. It's not the strongest one, but possibly early 25th, early in that morning. Not saying that makes any.
So he just happened to leave right before his family was massacred.
Hey, it's an argument.
It's a stretch. You're a criminal
It's a
defense
stretch.
attorney. I feel
It's a
you.
stretch.
It's just not common sense. It's not reasonable. And this jury's going to see that because I think that's all they need. This whole gun conversation isn't necessary. I think that's enough, and they just need to hammer home with that point. All right, stand by. Don't go anywhere. Court should be starting in just a few minutes. This is Court TV Live, your front row seat to justice.